Okay, we are here. This is the software that I use to talk to the 3D printer, right? So you have the whole Onshape thing, and that's great for designing. Um, you don't necessarily have to design Onshape, but it's a great tool. But then you need a whole another software to actually, so that's just creating the geometry of this thing, and then obviously you need a whole another thing called a slicer to talk to, give it instructions and actually um, print it, right? So it has its own firmware and all that. Um, so I have, this is what the base plate looks like. It's literally a plate. You can print anything inside a 10-inch box, right? 10 inches high, 10 inches left, right. We're gonna print this thing, or we're gonna talk about printing this thing first. Um, don't worry too much about these settings. I want to talk to you about these settings because if you're interested, I think you can um, it's really cool to 3D print a bunch of stuff. Um, but this is just very quickly the line width, right? So we talk about line width. That's what I mean. It's around 0.5 millimeter. That's all I'm going to say because I realize I literally just told you I'm not going to talk about settings, and I pointed out a setting. So if we slice this right now, so slice means like getting it prepared and all of that, and then I can go ahead, once I've sliced this, now I can print it, right? I did not print it, but you can see there's all this green stuff, right? Green means support. So this is stuff that you have to throw away, so you're wasting material, and it's not pretty. When you kind of take it off, it's very rough. You kind of have to probably do some sanding and some stuff. Sometimes it's hard to even take it off because you're printing the same material. What it does, it starts at the bottom here. It takes the same material. All this stuff not in green, by the way, is your final part, right? So that's great. It prints it up layer by layer. And this is the same material, same kind of, line width and all of that. And so kind of the same strength, right? And so they make it a little weaker at the point that they come together, right? So right here it's still the same as this, right? Kind of. Geometrically it's different, but like right here, that dark green is like a little bit of buffer, right? And so they make it not so strong, and then it's just your same material, right? So it's a long way of saying support is not very good. Sometimes it's necessary. You can't get away with not using it, but in this case we're using a lot, and we're using it not very well, right? So we're using 34% of our print is just support, right? So if we printed a bunch of these, that'd be a lot of waste. 2.5 grams or 2.3 grams of that is support of the almost 6 gram thing in total, right? Another reason we don't want to print like this, right, is just the look at this, right? Kind of smooths it in the software, but this will turn out very. You will see these steps, right? What you see here is pretty much what you get, right? And with all this curvature, if this layer height is 0.2 millimeters right now. Actually, this layer height is 0.08 millimeters right now, right? So it's very fine, and you're still going to see this kind of steppiness, right? That's just because, if this was zero, if this was infinitely, if this approached zero, and I got really, really fine, then it would be perfect, right? It'd be curved exactly like in the CAD, but we can't do that because it's finite, and so it'll have these little steps, right? It won't be a huge deal. We could probably sand them out, but it's, again, not great. Okay, so then what do we do, right? Because it seems like I've been being pretty mean to this so far. We're gonna go back to prepare, and let's say I want to put this on its side, right? You don't really need to know the keyboard shortcut there, but well, yeah, I'm not gonna go into that. So much better, right? So much better already. Just from that, the overall print is now down to 3.6 millimeters. We do have some support, but it's down to grams. Sorry. We do have some support, but it's down to half a gram out of, I think it was like 2.3 before. This is looking smooth, right? Because we can do I mean, again, it's not going to be infinitely fine curvature here, but it's so much better than the height, right? So in this kind of 3D printing, there are different kinds, by the way, but in this kind of 3D printing, this Z axis, this height axis is kryptonite. Everything fails. Everything is worse because we're building up layer by layer, right? So that means the layers in between the layers are not as strong as they would ordinarily be. We have support problems. Because we can't print on thin air. We have all these problems, right? But this is a whole lot better, right? We can have empty space at the top because we don't need anything above this, so there's no need for support here. But we do need support below this, right? So stepping through, this is exactly what it is. It starts from here. All of this underneath, right? There's nothing there because it looks like that, right? It's hollow, right? So, but if we just printed this outside orange, printed orange, and then we stepped to right here and we tried to print this blue without anything underneath it, it would fall. It's gravity, and I mean, not just gravity, right? There's nothing to stick it down, right? And so this would just fail print, and you would see kind of globby badness. And so we have to use this support, right? So okay, it's good. It's not great because digging this out is a real pain sometimes, right? So we have to unstick it from the bed, and then we'd have to dig it out and all that. What if we went back to our design and split it in half to begin with, right? So this was just like this was exactly before you mirrored it, or I mirrored it, and then in the thing, instead of clicking add to the mirror, I clicked new, and so it became a new part. I don't technically need to export both of these as files, right? If I did right click on here, I can mirror this in the thing. I can mirror it along Y, and now these are both the same bit, right? So I'm gonna undo that. But, anyway, now what happens? Again, we don't want to print it in this orientation, but boom and boom. Slice that up. Again, the positioning is not great, but no support, right? Now we know the actual, we're using all of what we're printing, so it's gonna be 3.5 grams for this whole thing, which sounds kind of heavy. Maybe we should lighten this up a little bit. But it takes a lot less time, and there's no post-processing. We don't have to sand or melt or whatever, anything. But we just have to stick these two together, right? That's it. We can glue them. It's not a big deal. If it was a big deal, we could put like 2 holes in these things, right? So a hole right there, a hole right there, and a hole right there, a hole right there, or some kind of joinery, which is very common. And we don't even have to screw them together. We could just use those things to align them, right? If you stick two rods all the way through, and we have a bunch of these, right? So it's not just these two. You stick them through the whole thing, and we can easily take them out after we're done. You know, whatever the process ends up being. Great. So we have that. Again, these are all weaker in this direction now. So they're prone to kind of peeling off layer by layer, right? So you need to think about, is that going to be a problem? In our case, I don't think it'll be a problem, right? Imagine this is glued to some kind of, you know, the wall of the wing. Well, the glue is going to hold it together, right? So that's number one. If it's not glued everywhere, maybe it's glued here and in just spots, then these are unsupported. But again, I don't see a big deal with this, right? Yes, technically you have wind coming here, and so if wind is faster here versus here, then you know. But anyway, not a huge problem. So I think we're good to go. Again, 3.5 grams seems really heavy to me. So I'm gonna go in and maybe try to mess around with some of these things to make it lighter. I'm not gonna go ahead and print this yet, unless you tell me to. Again, I said we're moving away from cardboard, so if you want me to, I can go ahead and print some of these. I would print like a whole bunch of them. And I've been working on a way to like what are we gonna wrap this in, right? We want something that's actually kind of stiff. We want something that, like, it can't just be a plastic bag, right? Or if it is a plastic bag, then we need some internal structure as well, right? So then these things definitely need some kind of holes in them, something that will let a rod go through, and that rod just stays in there now because it adds the support. So I'll discuss that again because I'll discuss that more with you in person maybe, or in another video if you ask for it. Another thing we forgot, hold on, before I sign off here, we forgot elevators, right? Elevators, ailerons, the things in the backs of these that can control, what is it? Well, it's both pitch and roll, right? So we actually want to cut these off and print our own, right? So that would not be in this software. We'd go into Onshape and we'd say, oh, well, we want to make our elevators this big, so we're going to, hold on.